Hi, my name is Rosemary. I'm 35, and my life looks like a neatly formatted report from the outside. A stable position as a data analysis specialist at a large bank, bringing in very good money, a cozy apartment with a mortgage, and, as my greatest achievement and solace, my own little house by the lake. It's there, among the whisper of reeds and the endless expanse of water, that I truly find peace for my soul, spending long weeks in the summer and short weekends in the fall and winter, when the city's hum and endless digital arrays become unbearable. Both the house and my job are in the same state, while my family settled next door. A 6-hour drive on the highway, the perfect distance, a buffer zone saving me from intrusive involvement in endless family dramas. I only visit them on special occasions, holidays, and birthdays. My parents, lively and energetic people who have just crossed the 60-year mark, and my younger sister Rebecca, 32 years old. That's our entire small clan. Rebecca, who married the charming Tom, has been and remains the family's favorite since infancy, the sun around which our family universe revolves. I got used to it long ago, almost resigned. Many years ago, driven by an impulse of daughterly and sisterly love, I gave them spare keys to my refuge by the water. Back then, that gesture seemed pleasant and right, a sign of trust and unity. They used this privilege infrequently, a few times a year, and their rare visits didn't violate my personal space. In April, I came, as expected, to congratulate Rebecca on her birthday. The celebration was at our parents' house, smelling of the familiar apple pie and wax polish from my childhood. I gave my sister a generous gift, a set of those very expensive skincare products she had so enthusiastically mentioned in our rare conversations. The party was typical, as if following the same script. At the dinner table, amidst the steady clinking of cutlery, the conversation revolved exclusively around Rebecca and Tom's life. Mom and Dad, interrupting each other, delightedly talked about our daughter's recent promotion, our son-in-law's new car, their grand plans for a kitchen renovation, which they seemed to have started solely for the future visits of their favorite. Mom, out of politeness, turned to me a couple of times. "So, how are things with you anyway, Rosemary?" But as soon as I opened my mouth to share news about my complex project, Rebecca immediately seized the initiative, showering everyone with another fascinating story about herself. After the third such attempt, I just gave up, retreated into the shadows, and silently ate my dinner, accompanied by the chorus of enthusiastic exclamations from my sister. I didn't even feel the usual irritation, just a calm, almost detached resignation. I had understood this simple truth years ago. Waiting for special attention or genuine interest in my life, separate from theirs, was pointless. Closer to the end of the meal, Rebecca, beaming with her winning smile, suddenly turned her gaze to me and asked, "By the way, what are you planning to do with your lake house this summer?" I just shrugged. "As usual. I'll relax there alone or maybe with friends. Maybe rent it out for a few weeks to help cover the mortgage for the apartment." My parents at that moment exchanged a strange, quick glance, but I, lulled by the monotony of the evening, didn't attach any significance to that episode. I spent the night in my old room, and the next morning I headed back to my real life. Everything quickly returned to its usual routine. I immersed myself headlong in work on a new complex project related to big data analysis, where every number was in its place and nothing disrupted the established algorithm. 2 weeks passed. I was sitting at my desk, engrossed in the multicolored graphs on my monitor, when the persistent vibration of my phone cut through the silence. Messages, one after another, started popping up in our general family group chat, that very digital space inhabited by me, my parents, Rebecca and Tom, as well as several aunts, uncles, and cousins, whose names I sometimes struggled to remember. Rebecca was first. Her text, bright and full of joyful determination, read, "Dear everyone, we've thought it over and made a fantastic decision. We're renting Rosemary's lake house for the whole summer. We'll be there every day. It's going to be absolutely amazing." I froze and stared at the bright screen with cold, mounting disbelief. Replies poured in immediately, like hail. Aunt Linda wrote, "Oh, wonderful. I'd love to spend my vacation there too." Cousin Mark immediately responded, "Sign us up for a weekend." And Cousin Sarah, without a second thought, added, "I'll definitely come there for my vacation." The entire chat was flooded with enthusiastic emojis with hearts, thumbs up, and smiling faces. No one asked me, not a single thought, Not a second of doubt crossed their minds to check if my house was free, if I agreed. They just collectively decided that my property, earned and paid for by years of labor, by default belonged to the family and could be commandeered for common use at their first whim. My fingers tapped out a reply on their own, cold and detached. Actually, you should have asked me first. I'm planning to spend my vacation there in June, alone. I need a break from everyone, and I don't need neighbors, even if those neighbors are my family. The reaction was instant, furious, and unanimous. Rebecca, Rosemary, don't be so selfish, Tom immediately chimed in. Come on, it's just a house. Aunt Linda threw in her 2 cents. That house belongs to all of us. We're family, Uncle Mike added sternly. You can't talk about family like that. I tried to get a word in, to explain, to make them understand that it's my house, that I'm paying the mortgage, that it's my right to decide who crosses its threshold. But my messages were drowned in a chorus of outraged voices, convincing me that I was being unreasonable and selfish. And then, as if putting a final full stop in this argument, a message came from Mom. Everyone, just ignore Rosemary. She'll come around eventually and do as we want. This text was met with a hail of approving likes and laughing emojis. I sat back in my chair, reading this, feeling the blood pounding in my temples and my blood pressure rising. My family had always taken me for granted, but this was a completely new, cynical level. I mentally went through everything I had done for them. A new microwave for my parents when their old one broke, then a washing machine, then a dishwasher. I had bailed Rebecca out more than once by paying her car insurance. I helped aunts and uncles with medical bills and dental services, and this was the final thanks, treating my property as their rightful spoils, to be taken whenever they pleased. The decision matured instantly, crystallizing from resentment and cold fury. They wanted to play games? Well, I'd prepare a surprise they wouldn't forget. Taking a few days off from work, I headed to the lake. The journey took about an hour, a mockingly short time compared to the 6 hours my family spent on the road from the neighboring state. The next morning, I called a security company. That same day, a crew of specialists installed surveillance cameras with impeccable coverage all around the perimeter of the house, as well as a modern alarm system connected directly to me and the local police department. Next, a locksmith arrived. The old locks, under which spare keys had once been so generously distributed, were removed. Now, new, shiny locks hung on every door, and the only set of keys lay as a heavy, cold bundle in my palm. I stood on the porch, looking at the reflection of the lake in the windows of my beautiful, impregnable refuge, and for the first time in a long while, I felt not irritation, but a deep, hard-won satisfaction. They thought I would, as always, back down and let them take over, but very soon they would realize they were mistaken. Returning home, I plunged back into work, but now with a new ritual, regularly checking the camera feeds. The house was empty. My family, apparently, was in full confidence that they could come and go as they pleased in the summer. Then, at the end of May, activity flared up again in the family chat. A message from Rebecca stated, "Great, we're all meeting at Rosemary's Lake House tomorrow." My parents immediately confirmed, "We'll be there." Aunt Linda, "Wouldn't want to miss this." Uncle Mike and Aunt Sharon, "We're in." Several cousins also hurried to sign up for this summit. I read the messages and, for the first time in weeks, allowed myself to smile. Tomorrow promised to be truly interesting. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with an open laptop, watching the live feed from the cameras. My coffee grew cold, but so what? The spectacle unfolding on the screen was too engrossing to look away. Around noon, on my laptop screen, as if in a well-staged play, the first actors began to appear. Rebecca and Tom's freshly washed SUV rolled smoothly onto the gravel driveway, swaying slightly. Following them, with almost ceremonial slowness, my parents' sedan parked. Not far behind, 2 more cars pulled up, from which, like clowns from an overstuffed car at the circus, aunts, uncles, and cousins poured out. They unloaded, laughing and chatting, their voices, muffled by the microphone, coming through as an indistinct hum. I saw them pulling voluminous bags and massive coolers from the trunks, with the air of full-fledged owners planning to settle in for the whole day, if not longer. Rebecca, true to her role as the leader, was the first to approach the front door. With her usual confidence, she pulled the cherished key from her purse and tried to insert it into the keyhole. The metal stubbornly refused to yield. She tried again, tugging the handle in irritation, but the old passkey just slid helplessly over the surface of the new, sturdy mechanism. Tom joined her, producing his copy. The result was the same, a humiliating failure. On their faces, sharply captured by the high-resolution camera, I could clearly see growing confusion, quickly turning into annoyance. They were discussing something heatedly when Tom, suddenly looking up, pointed a finger directly at the lens of the camera hidden under the roof eaves. All eyes turned at once to one point, and in that moment, I witnessed a wonderful metamorphosis. Their features contorted, confusion evaporated, giving way to pure, genuine anger. They understood everything. My phone immediately exploded with calls. First, true to form, was Mom. I watched her name dance on the smartphone screen and didn't answer. Next, Rebecca's ringtone blared. I sent the call straight to voicemail. Then Tom tried desperately to reach me, to no avail. The baton was taken up by Aunt and Uncle. I ignored them all, enjoying the spectacle on the monitor. Then a stream of messages poured into the family chat. Rosemary has lost her mind. She changed the locks. That was Rebecca. This is ridiculous. We drove for 6 hours, echoed Tom. How could you do this to your family? Mom reproached. You've let us all down. This is unacceptable, Dad echoed. I took time off work, Aunt Linda was outraged. You're a complete egoist, Uncle Mike declared. And then Tom delivered the gem. I'll break this door down. I laughed out loud in the silence of my kitchen and typed a single reply. If you break the door, the alarm will go off, and the police will come. You'll all be arrested for breaking and entering. I watched on the camera as they, in sync, as if on command, buried themselves in their phones. The expressions on their faces, changing from anger to bewilderment and fear in just 2 seconds, were truly priceless. After that, I left the family group chat without regret. The drama had finally bored me. On the recording, I saw them, huddled by the door, gesticulating furiously, arguing about something. Their figures expressed extreme frustration. After about 15 minutes, with utterly defeated faces, they, heads hanging, trudged to their cars and drove away. I finished my cold coffee and went about my day, feeling a deep, unclouded sense of satisfaction. In the evening, the phone came to life again. This time, Mom was calling. I finally decided to answer. How could you do this to us? Her voice came through the receiver, all its usual pleasantness gone. I retorted coldly. No hello? Not going to ask how I am? Jumping straight to the guilt trip? We drove all that way, and you just locked us out. You're a traitor. I warned you clearly that it's my property, and only I decide who uses it. You all ignored me and decided you could do whatever you wanted. But we're family. Families don't act like this. Families don't treat someone else's property as common property. You've all been behaving terribly, and from now on, none of you are allowed to set foot there again. Rosemary, you're being unreasonable. And Mom, I won't be helping you financially anymore. No more money for appliances, repairs, or anything else. And tell Rebecca that as of this month, she pays for her own car insurance. And tell Aunt Linda and Uncle Mike that their medical bills and dental services are exclusively their concern now. A deathly silence hung on the other end of the line, thick and heavy. You don't mean that, dear, Mom finally squeezed out, and a crack of uncertainty sounded in her voice for the first time. I am absolutely serious. My voice was cold and even, like polished granite. You've all been taking advantage of my compliance for years, and I've had enough. I hung up, not giving her a chance for further manipulation, severing the one-sided communication channel that had existed for years. Immediately, with an almost ritual sense of liberation, I opened the banking app, a fingerprint confirmation, and one by one, all the recurring transfers were canceled. The one to my parents for sundries, and the one that had been reliably covering Rebecca's insurance all these years. It felt strangely pleasant to feel this return of control, as if I had cut the invisible but strong ropes tying me to the role of family sponsor. For the next few days, my phone resembled a wounded animal, bursting with endless calls and messages from furious relatives. I didn't answer a single call, just coldly watched the evolution of their reaction in the texts. First came angry tirades. How dare you destroy the family? You're behaving disgracefully. Then, when anger didn't work, the heavy artillery, guilt, came into play. We just wanted to be together, and family is about help and support. And finally, when that didn't work either, timid, strained apologies appeared. Sorry, we might have been too presumptuous. I didn't dignify them with a response. The games were over, the board overturned. 2 weeks later, I took a long-awaited vacation and went to my lake house. I spent 14 heavenly days there in blissful solitude. No uninvited guests, no family dramas, no encroachments on my space. I swam in the cool morning surface of the lake, read books on the sunny veranda, cooked exquisite meals just for myself, and explored the surrounding trails. It was the most serene and peaceful vacation in many years. Every day I checked the camera recordings. The archive remained clean. Not a single shadow dared to approach my refuge. My family, it seemed, had finally learned their lesson. During those 2 weeks, I thought a lot about how my loved ones had treated me for years. I tried to be helpful, a model daughter and sister, giving money, providing property, patiently listening to endless sagas about Rebecca's life, while my own life was ignored. And what did I get in the end? I was taken for granted, seen as a reliable resource without the right to say no. Well, that era was gone. Returning home after the vacation, I felt different, lighter, as if I had shrugged off a heavy burden I had been carrying for years without even realizing its weight. I plunged into work with new, unprecedented energy. My boss even noted my focus and productivity, and soon I was assigned to lead a major project, a great line on my resume. My personal life improved too. I started seeing my real friends more often, people who respected my boundaries and didn't look at me as a wallet or a servant. 2 months after the lake incident, a message came from Mom, the first one after all that silence. "My birthday is next week. We'd really like to see you. We need to talk." I pondered this for a few days. Part of me wanted to simply ignore the message and continue living my life. But another, curious and perhaps somewhere deep down still hoping, wondered what they would finally say. Finally, after much thought, I typed a short reply. "I'll come for the weekend." Choosing a gift for Mom this time was a matter of 5 minutes in the nearest department store. A simple, unremarkable photo frame, strikingly different from the generous and expensive things I had given before. The road to my parents' house that weekend was filled with a strange mix of feelings. A slight nervous tremor mixed with an unexpected deep calm. I was firmly resolved not to let them guilt-trip me, and was ready to defend my boundaries, whatever their speeches might be. When I drove up to the familiar house, several cars were already in the driveway, Rebecca and Tom's, as well as a couple of my aunts and uncles. Great, flashed through my mind. So it's not just a modest family dinner, but something more. Picking up the modestly wrapped frame, I headed for the entrance. The door swung open before I could knock. Mom stood on the threshold, her face showing obvious anxiety. "Rosemary, I'm so glad you came." "Hi, Mom. Happy birthday," I replied, stepping over the threshold. The living room was filled with a thick, almost tangible atmosphere of awkwardness and tension. All present turned to me at once. Rebecca, sitting on the sofa next to Tom, looked embarrassed. Father was sitting in his armchair, and the aunts and uncles were frozen in different corners of the room. It seemed no one knew where to start. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. "Rosemary, we're all very glad you're here. We've been wanting to talk to you for a long time." "Okay," I replied. "I'm listening." Rebecca was the first to speak up. We all want to apologize. We understand we were wrong about the lake house situation. We shouldn't have assumed we could just take and manage your property," Tom added. Aunt Linda nodded in agreement. "We behaved disrespectfully and rudely." I slowly looked around at their faces. This time, their eyes showed not feigned regret, but sincere remorse. "We know we messed up," Mom said quietly. "We've been talking about it for weeks, and we all agree we treated you terribly." "You were right," Uncle Mike chimed in. "The thing is, Rosemary," Dad began, "we now understand that the lake house isn't even the main problem. Or rather, it is a problem, but not the root one." "What do you mean?" I asked. "What hurt us the most was that you stopped talking to us," he explained. "You cut all ties. That made us realize how long we had been taking you for granted." Mom came closer to me. "I'm sorry, dear. I'm sorry everything always revolved around Rebecca. I'm sorry we considered your house ours. I'm sorry we expected your financial help without even thanking or appreciating everything you did for us." I handed her the wrapped frame. "Here's your birthday gift." She took it and, without opening it, set it aside. "Rosemary, can you forgive us? We want to make things right." I scanned the room again. All the looks were sincere. Rebecca's eyes were glistening with tears. Even Tom looked genuinely remorseful. "I need to think about it," I said firmly. "I'm not ready to just go back to how things were before." "We understand," Rebecca responded. "We're not asking you to forget everything. We're just asking for a chance to make it right." "I'm willing to communicate with all of you again," I announced. "But things will be different. I won't be the family ATM anymore. I won't allow you to use my property whenever you feel like it. And I need all of you, without exception, to respect my boundaries." Everyone present nodded. "We can do that," Dad said. "We want to do that. And for now, the lake house remains off limits to everyone," I added. "Maybe that will change in time. Maybe. But not now." "Fair enough," Mom said quietly, and her voice held an uncharacteristic humility. The rest of the birthday was still tinged with slight awkwardness, but the atmosphere wasn't as oppressive as in the first minutes. We ate the birthday cake, and everyone present made visible efforts to keep the conversation in the realm of normal, respectful communication. Rebecca, to my surprise, asked about my work, and for the first time in many years, she didn't just pretend to listen, but actually engaged with my story about the complexities of big data analysis, without interrupting or steering the conversation back to herself. That evening, driving home, I felt a strange, dual mix of emotions. On one hand, I felt a kind of relief. They had apologized and seemed to finally understand the depth of their mistake. But on the other, an old pain still smoldered in my soul, and my mind maintained a healthy wariness. I was aware that people don't change overnight, and I wasn't going to fling the doors of my life wide open, losing my vigilance. Over the next few months, my relationship with my family began to slowly but steadily improve. Mom called once a week without a special reason, just to chat about little things. Rebecca occasionally sent funny memes or short messages asking how I was doing. Dad once sent me a scientific article about data that he thought might interest me. I saw they were trying, and I appreciated these timid attempts. However, I stood my ground firmly. When Mom casually mentioned that their refrigerator was acting up, I didn't offer to buy a new one immediately. When Rebecca complained about the increased cost of her insurance, I didn't send a virtual check. And you know what? They didn't even ask for it. They were learning to respect my boundaries in practice. I still regularly visited my lake house, and still wasn't in a hurry to send out invitations to relatives. The surveillance cameras diligently performed their duty, and the only set of keys remained in my wallet. That space remained my inviolable refuge, and I wasn't ready to share it again. At work, things were going great. The major project I was leading culminated in a resounding success, and my boss hinted transparently at an upcoming promotion. My life had gained a long-awaited balance and peace that had been absent for many years. I even started dating a man named Michael, whom mutual friends had introduced me to. When I, having mustered some trust, told him the story of the family conflict over the lake house, he was genuinely shocked. "They just decided they could take your property for the whole summer, without asking?" he asked again. "Yes, and they were furious when I objected," I confirmed. "That's insane. You did absolutely the right thing by setting clear boundaries." It was incredibly nice to hear that confirmation from someone not involved in our family drama. 6 months after that birthday, I was in my apartment when Rebecca called. "Hi, can I ask you something?" Her voice sounded uncertain. "I know the lake house is still off limits, and I completely respect that, but I thought, maybe sometime in the future, like next summer, Tom and I could come visit you. Just us, for a weekend only. We'll of course ask for permission first and follow all your rules." I thought for a moment. "Maybe. Let me think about it." "That's all I'm asking. Thank you for just being willing to consider it," she replied with sincere gratitude. After we hung up, I realized something extremely important had happened. Rebecca had asked. She hadn't assumed it was her right. She hadn't demanded. She had politely asked and humbly accepted the possibility of my refusal. That was real progress. I still wasn't sure if I could ever let them into my lake house again. Maybe yes, maybe no, and that was okay. It was my property, my decision, and they had finally understood that. Our relationship wasn't perfect, and probably never would be, but now it was better than it had been. We talked sometimes. They were learning to respect my boundaries, and I no longer felt used. The most important thing I took away from this whole story was a deep, hard-won confidence that it's okay to say no to your own family. It's okay to protect what rightfully belongs to me, and it's okay to demand respect for your boundaries, even from those who are supposed to love you unconditionally. Exactly 1 year had passed since that memorable incident at the lake, and my life had changed in ways I could never have imagined. I got the long-awaited promotion, and now held the position of Senior Data Analysis Specialist, with a substantial pay raise. My relationship with Michael had progressed to a new, more serious level, and we had begun cautiously discussing the possibility of moving in together. My relationship with my family had stabilized, finding that golden mean where comfortable coexistence was possible. We communicated regularly, but without the former intrusiveness. I visited them several times a year for major holidays and birthdays, and, what was a real revelation, they once came to visit me, which happened for the first time. Usually, I was the one making the 6-hour journey. Mom and Dad, to my surprise, had learned to manage their budget. When their dishwasher finally broke down, they replaced it with a new one without a word about help. Rebecca paid for her own insurance, and moreover, found a better-paying job. These changes in the family dynamics seemed small, almost unnoticeable from the outside, but for me, they were of fundamental, immense importance. At family dinners, people now actually listened to me. When I talked about my work projects, I wasn't interrupted or the topic changed. Rebecca even asked me for career advice a few times. It was still far from perfect, but it was incomparably better, and I finally realized that better was good enough. The lake house remained my sacred refuge. I continued to visit there alone regularly, without expanding the circle of invitees. The surveillance cameras worked reliably, and I didn't change the new locks. Perhaps it seemed cruel from the outside, but I needed to know that this space was 100% mine, and no one could encroach upon it without my consent. One day, during one of those quiet summer evenings when I was relaxing on the veranda, enjoying the peace, Michael called. "Hi, I was thinking about something. You mentioned once that you might someday allow your family to visit the lake house again. Do you think you're ready for that now?" I've been asking myself the same question, I admitted honestly. I don't know. One part of me thinks enough time has passed, but the other, the one that remembers every detail of that humiliation, is afraid they'll revert to their old habits. "What does your gut tell you?" he asked softly. "You know what?" I said, suddenly feeling an unexpected clarity. "It tells me that maybe I could allow Rebecca and Tom to come for a weekend. Just them, not the whole family at once, and on the strict condition that they ask for permission first and unconditionally respect all my rules." "Sounds reasonable," Michael supported. "Think about it some more." A few weeks later, the phone rang again. This time, Rebecca. "Rosemary, I know I asked before, but I want to ask again. Could you possibly allow Tom and me to come to your lake house? We will be extremely respectful. We'll clean up after ourselves and stay exactly as long as you allow." This was already her third attempt in the last year, and each time she had been invariably polite and accepted my refusal without argument. "What if you come for a weekend next month?" I heard my own voice say, firm and calm. "Just you and Tom, no other relatives." A slight, astonished pause hung on the other end of the line. "Really? Are you sure?" "I'm willing to try," I said. "But Rebecca, remember, if you betray my trust again, that's it. There won't be a second chance." "I understand. Thank you, Rosemary. We won't let you down." When the designated weekend arrived, I felt a nervous tension hanging in the air, like the calm before a storm. So I decided to come to the lake house a day before their visit, to personally ensure everything was prepared and in perfect order, and to check the proper functioning of the surveillance cameras, which I left on just in case of any unforeseen circumstances, which I hoped wouldn't arise. Rebecca and Tom appeared at the doorstep exactly at the agreed time, without being late, which was already an encouraging sign. They brought their own supplies and didn't ask for anything, spending the weekend in a measured rest. They swam in the clear lake water, walked the surrounding trails, and simply enjoyed the peace, carefully cleaning up after themselves and not expressing the slightest dissatisfaction with my established rules. On Sunday, as they were getting ready to leave, Rebecca, before getting into the car, hugged me with uncharacteristic sincerity and whispered, "Thank you for giving us another chance. It means so much to us." To which I, feeling a slight liberation from the burden of past grievances, replied, "You earned it by respecting my boundaries." After they left, I felt a deep, quiet joy from the decision I had made. It was just a small, cautious step, but for all of us, it meant undeniable progress. Although I still didn't know if I would ever allow the whole family to gather here, or if things should return to the old order. And honestly, I didn't want to return to the past where I was used and taken for granted, whereas now I was treated with respect and valued, which was something definitely worth preserving. A few months later, Michael and I announced our engagement and began planning a modest wedding. And when I shared this news with my family, their joy sounded genuine, and Mom even offered to help with the preparations, without trying to take full control of the organization, while Rebecca asked if she could be at the celebration, and I agreed not out of a sense of obligation, but because our relationship had truly improved, and I myself wanted her by my side on that day. At the engagement party itself, Dad took me aside and said quietly but weightily, "I'm proud of you, Rosemary, not just for your career or this engagement, but for how you managed to stand up for yourself last year. I know it wasn't easy." And I, feeling the last tension ease, replied, "It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was the right thing. You all needed to learn that lesson, and I was the one who was brave enough to teach it." Now, sitting in my apartment, immersed in plans for the future wedding and life with Michael, I reflect on how much my life has transformed over this year. I've become immeasurably happier, more self-assured, and found an inner strength, while maintaining certain boundaries in communication with my family that will probably stay with me forever. The lake house still remains primarily my personal space, and I carefully choose whom to invite there. I stopped financial support from my relatives, and no longer allow my generosity to be abused. And although some from the outside might consider me overly harsh or resentful, I know the truth. I am simply protecting myself and my life, building relationships based on mutual respect, not on one-sided obligations. My family, over the past year, has demonstrated an ability to respect these boundaries and build healthy, equal relationships with me. But I'm not naive enough to believe the risks have completely vanished, and that's why I maintain a slight wariness. That's why the surveillance cameras remain in place. And that's why I always carefully consider every yes before I say it, because I learned from bitter experience that family ties shouldn't mean unlimited access to your life, your property, or your resources, because genuine love and respect must always be mutual.